Hello everybody, it's Jack from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out Potown Store, where you can get 5% off your order using code OmniPoke. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Raging Surf cards revealed. Overnight, we already had sort of probably 60% of them, a lot of the EXs, a lot of the exciting stuff, but we now have the full set, and this is going to be making up basically like a third of our Paradox Rift set. Please bear with me today, I'm feeling really rough, so yeah, you'll have to bear with me a little bit. I think I'm getting sick, which is unfortunate, but I wanted to bring this video because I always like doing these first impression videos. Primarily because sometimes I'm really, really wrong about some cards, and it's quite funny to go back and see how wrong I was about some of them. But I also think first impression videos are quite interesting to see how impactful these cards may be. So like I say, these cards are going to be combining with the, I can't remember what the sets are called, but it's like the future and past sets that are going to be real, Ancient Flash and Future something, I can't remember what they're called, to make up our Paradox Rift set in November. So we've already seen some crazy cards, and me and Joe did a full sort of initial introduction to those cards a couple of days ago and first impressions and stuff. They look very, very powerful, so I think these cards are going to have a lot to live up to be going in the same set as them. But let's jump straight into it with the trainers. We have a reprint of Rare Candy and a reprint of Switch. Nothing too crazy there. They have the G regulation mark still, so it's not extending their legality at all, though undoubtedly they will still be legal in the H block. First new trainer is a tool card. Gorgeous Mantle says if the Pokemon this card is attached to does not have a rule box, it gets 100 HP, and when it's knocked out, your opponent takes one more prize card. So this is very similar to something like an Expert Belt back from the Diamond and Pearl days, which was a very, very strong card. Admittedly, Expert Belt also did increase the amount of damage you did, and I think that was primarily why that was stronger than this. 100 HP though is a lot of HP for a one prizer. I'm sure this will see some use here and there. These kinds of effects are always a little bit scary because when you add HP on, because we have things like Field Blower and stuff that can then just remove the tool. Your opponent can have done enough damage to be able to get a KO, and then they can take multiple prize cards at a turn. But because you're already giving up an extra prize card because of the Gorgeous Mantle, there's actually not that as much of an incentive to be able to do that. It's more of being able to take out two attackers in a turn rather than the prize-based things. So, yeah, I'm not like blown away by this card, but 100 HP is a lot, and there's there's various like one prize decks that may end up trying to fit this in. I think a lot of the time the one prize decks actually need help damage wise more so than HP wise, because damage is so high anyway in some of these multi prize Pokemon. Sometimes the 100 HP won't actually be that impactful. So they care more about damage and trying to trade up rather than trying to live a little bit longer. So I've not got massive hopes for this card, but I think this is probably like the only way they could really like reprint something like Expert Belt. Maybe like a 10 damage mod for single prizes would work, but I think they have to be quite careful because they do release some very, very strong one prize Pokemon now and again. There's nothing that jumps to mind though at the moment that I would want to play this in though, so I'm not sure whether this will have a massive splash or whether this will just end up not quite being as good as people may think. But yeah, it could fit somewhere, but I can't think of anywhere right now, so I don't think it's going to be too strong. We have some TMs return, TM Turbo Energize. These can be attached to any of your Pokemon. And then the Pokemon can use the attack on this card, and then you have to discard it at the end of turn. So I think that's a very relevant little line of text there, because it means that you have to be only attaching this when you want to play it, and that could limit the or hurt the playability of some of these cards just because you have to have them on the right turn. So this first one, Turbo Energize, is a colorless attack cost, and you search your deck for two basic energy and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. So you basically get a refund for the energy you pay plus one additional energy at the cost of having to find this realistically probably on your first turn, which is a bit awkward. It's nice that you're getting a refund. It's nice that you're able to accelerate a couple of energy, but I think the odds of finding this on your first turn. We do have things like Town Store and stuff, which does make finding tools easier. And I feel like we could start to see maybe Town Store see a bit more popularity because there are some very good tools that you might want to play as like a one-off here and there. But I think a lot of the time it's going to be too difficult to find. I think this will only fit into decks that already play Town Store, and realistically, the ones I can think of are some Lost Box builds, which I don't think would want to play this really, because they're trying to turbo to 7 anyway, and just Mirage Gate. I've seen a couple of Gardevoir lists here and there that play it, because obviously they want bouncers. I can't see it being massively impactful for Gardevoir, but again, because you get the refund on the energy, plus if you're attaching this to like a Mew or whatever, that's pretty cool. You're able to start attaching some additional energy things like maybe Zacian or Gardevoir or Cresselia or anything like that. But again, I don't think it's quite worth the slot. Is there anything else that really plays Town Store that could play this? I think some Charizard lists do, but they already have energy acceleration. At least it's like combo energy acceleration, but again, they just want to be attacking with Arceus as soon as possible. So yeah, I think this is just a little bit too weak. I don't think the Town Store decks that we have at the moment would want to play this, and I don't think this pushes Town Store enough to play it in other decks, but it is a bit more searchable than I'd first realised, so it is worth keeping in mind, I guess, that maybe if you're already playing that kind of combo with a handful of different tools, you may be able to drop this one in as well, just for some early acceleration. Excuse me. Next up, we have Blindside. Again, a tool that you discard at the end of the turn, and for 3 colourless, you do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon with any damage counters on it. So this is an interesting one. Basically giving any deck snipe, as long as they have a way of dealing damage to the bench already. But that's pretty universal with things like Hawlucha, so theoretically any deck can play a Hawlucha and a Blindside, and because this is a bit of a... because this attack would be used a little bit later in the game, you don't necessarily have to find it in the early turns, so it maybe can be played outside of Town Store decks. Obviously, again, because you have to discard at the end of the turn, you still have to use it on the turn that... you still have to find it on the turn that you're going to use it, and you can't preemptively attach it or anything, which is a bit annoying, but hey. 100 damage snipe is fine. It's going to be knocking out a lot of single prize Pokemon. Could finish off a 2 prize Pokemon that you've been able to hit already, like an EX. So, not a bad amount of damage. I think the most interesting use here is in decks that naturally wouldn't have any sniping capabilities. I'm thinking something like a Sablezard. This could be an interesting addition, given that I think we've seen, I could be wrong, please correct me in the comments if I am wrong, but I think we've seen Cramorant and Charizard will... well, if it turns out that Cramorant and Charizard do ignore the colourless in this attack cost, which I have seen a discussion about online, but I can't remember which way it was ruled. But if they do, you could be able to do this for free, which is pretty crazy, and because that deck naturally runs Radiant Charizard instead of Radiant Greninja, people don't really put Manaphy down against you, which means this isn't going to be blocked by Manaphy, which is interesting. So yeah, I can see this being a bit of a sort of surprise tech addition in a couple of decks. Again, I don't think it's crazy. I think the biggest use is, because we have Greninja in so many decks, we have Greninja that is able to, that we can Mirage Gate to in Tina and Lost Box. We have things like Cresselia and Gardevoir that can, deal damage to the bench. There's not that many decks that don't already have some kind of bench snipe, but this could be an interesting one in decks that don't have a bench snipe, that maybe it could be an alternative win condition. Again, there's a lot riding on one card in your deck to do that, but it could see play here and there as a bit of a surprise option, I think. It will be really interesting to see whether this is affected by Cram and Charizard. From off the top of my head, the way Cram's ability is worded, it sounds like it might be, because I think it just says something like you don't pay any colourless in this Pokemon's attack costs, but it's the whole Forest Seal Stone can't be blocked under path thing, whether this actually is on the Pokemon or whether it's on the trainer, so therefore it's not ignored. So yeah, I'll be interested to see the ruling on that. And And I think that may be one of the deciding factors whether this can be cheated out, and you don't have to worry about attaching 3 energy or anything like that as well. So yeah, another interesting tool card there. Onto the supporters, and they're not as impactful. We have Larry, which flips a coin. If heads, search your deck for 2 Pokemon. If tails, search your deck for a basic. Excuse me. So basically, this is a double Ultra Ball on a heads and a Quick Ball on a tails. I think this is a little bit too unreliable in a supporter, to be honest. This kind of effect on something like a Mesagoza we've seen, obviously that's only heads for anything, tails for nothing, so it's a little bit different, but this kind of effect on a stadium is a bit different because you still get to play a supporter and that stadium can last multiple turns. This is a big effect for just one supporter card though, and again, like you wouldn't want to like Luminion for this or whatever because you're potentially only getting like a refund on the Luminion when you could just search for the basic Pokemon you want instead of searching for the Luminion. So it's a very, very big upside, very low downside, or it's still a half decent downside because you're still getting something. It's not a complete waste of an effect, but it's very, very minimal in terms of like impact for a supporter card. So I think it's just not quite strong enough. I think the variance on this card is a bit too high. Sometimes you will flip the first option and it'll be great, and sometimes you will need an evolution Pokemon. I guess you probably wouldn't play this in a deck with evolutions anyway, so it's flip a coin. If heads, search 2 Pokemon, if tails, search 1 Pokemon. So, but again, I still feel like we have Great Ball search right now. We have Nest Ball, we have Ultra Ball. I don't feel like we need to play a supporter with this kind of effect. So yeah, I think it's a bit too weak. Chantel is another flip card that has a very, very variable power scale. If heads, you switch your opponent's bench Pokemon with the active Pokemon. If tails, you switch your active with your bench. So it's a boss on a heads and a switch on a tails. Again, way too unreliable. You will need both of those effects at key moments in the game, and you will need to know that you can pull off the right effect at the right time. And there is no way you would want to try and cheat space in terms of your boss and switch count by trying to play a card and play the odds and try and flip this. So yeah, way too unreliable to see play. Rika is a supporter that lets you look at the top 4 cards from your deck and put 2 in your hand, then shuffle the other 2 and put them on the bottom of your deck. Again, it's similar to Colrus, but a lot weaker than Colrus. I think you would always rather C5 take 3 and Lost Zone 2 than C4 and shuffle 2 to the bottom of your deck, because seeing 4 and seeing 5 is very, very different. Admittedly, this is, again, hand advantage compared to other cards like Shuffle Your Hand In or anything like that, which is cool. But I think while we have Colrus is just a superior option because getting an extra card, like 3 from 5, you get 60% of the cards, and yes, you have to Lost Zone 2, but again, you're seeing 5 cards. You're seeing the best 3 of 5 rather than the best 2 of 4. And for the price of Lost Zoning 2, I think that's fine. We already see Colrus in non-Lost Zone decks, so it's evidently a very strong draw supporter. And I think Rika is just not quite strong enough in comparison. Final supporter is Parasol Lady. You shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 4. If you go second and it's your first turn, you draw 8 instead. Way too unreliable. This is a great card on your first turn if you're going second, but 50% of the time this is a shuffle draw 4, which is worse than Shauna, which sees no play. And the other 50% of the time, other than turn 1, this is worse than a Shauna. So like 80% of the time, this is worse than a Shauna, which sees absolutely no play. So it's not worth the additional bonus effect on turn 1 at all, unfortunately. You could look at this and be like, oh, Lily was played very similarly, but equally, Lily was in a format where you could go first and you could use supporters, so like this part here didn't matter, so it was immediately useful for every person in every game. And also, searching supporters was the supporters we had were just way worse. We didn't have things like research at some points when we had Lily, so we were actually looking for good draw supporters. Right now we have really, really good supporters in formats, so we don't need to play an effect like this. Finally, we have Medical Energy, which is a new special energy that provides a colorless energy, and when you attach it, you heal 30 damage from this Pokemon. I can see this going to some of these tanky archetypes. I don't think there's anything major right now that's sort of a tanky deck, but this is the kind of card that we see when some of these cards, like a Blissey deck that we've seen in the past, or like Bliss Tank back from a World sort of a year ago and a little bit before, this is the kind of card that those decks affect, things like Oinkologne X. So none of these decks right now are particularly popular. We have way too many, or we have a lot of high damage effects in the format, and we have a lot of just take a knockout effects in the format. Giratina is our best deck right now, and it doesn't matter how much HP you have against that deck, it can just knock you out at any point. So not really going to be good enough until we see some kind of tanking archetype, which isn't going to happen for now, I don't think. But when that comes out, I can see us seeing playing with whatever Pokemon they decide to give this sort of tanking stuff to. So onto the actual Pokemon, and we're starting off with a Terra Grass Frostlass EX. Obviously, it's got that Terra ability. It's got 250 HP. The Terra ability meaning it's immune to damage on the bench. The ability is just out of reach. When this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent takes one less prize card for that knockout. It's a fine ability. It's not crazy. It's really quite easy to knock this out at 250 HP on a stage 1. So you need something like that just to not lose the game quite quickly anyway. But obviously, it's an additional or a nice little bonus to trying to not immediately lose. Obviously, because it's on a coin flip, there's it's not particularly reliable, but there will be times where your opponent's just flipping lots of tails and they're only be able to take out one prize. And a one prize 250 HP Pokemon is actually pretty good. So it's when it works, it works. I think I don't like these kind of coin flip effects that obviously if your opponent flips 3 tails, you're just playing very, very weak 2-prize Pokemon, so it's a bit risky, but the attack isn't that good either, I don't think. Water does 140 damage, Frost Bullet, and deals 20 to one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. It's just nothing really to write home about. It's a efficient-ish attack. 140 for 2 is pretty good, but it's not massively impactful in terms of that's not a particularly good breakpoint or anything. Grass is a decent type at the moment. It means that you can hit into Charizard, which I think will be getting stronger with the release of 151 over here. But we have to take all of these cards kind of in reflection of also having all of the future stuff and Iron Hands and that kind of stuff. And do we really want to be playing something like this? Is Charizard even going to be a thing? Do we really want to be playing something like this? Because it's a very, very fair card, right? So, I don't think it's really quite strong enough, which is a shame. I think the only Pokemon Grass is hitting right now is Charizard, so I don't think you'd really play this in your water deck to beat Charizard. You already have things like Chien Pao, which can just go over the top anyway. So, and you're not even doing enough damage. You still need some kind of modifier or some prior damage to be able to knock out Charizard anyway. So, I think this is not quite good enough. I don't think the grass typing in water decks really helps that much because we have Chien Pao anyway. Lapras lets you put 3 basic energy cards from your deck pile into your hand. Nothing too exciting. Octillery has Suction Draw. When you evolve into Octillery, you may draw 3 cards. We've seen this ability in the past. It's never been that impactful. The last one I remember it being on was a Manectric that I don't think really saw any play. I think the fact that this has 110 is actually one of the biggest limiting factors because it means you can't level ball for it. If you're able to level ball for this, I'd be a bit more enthused because you'd be able to level ball. Your level balls would basically be draw 3 cards. You could search for Remoraid or Octillery. If we also had some way of picking this up, it'd be great. But I think not having the way to search this out and not having a way to reuse this makes this basically a one-time draw 3 and then it's stuck on your bench and then you have to collapse it away, which is a shame. There's no real way of dealing with it other than that. We have Turo and a couple of movement effects coming out, but again, I don't think you'd play this to play them just for that kind of combo. The only very small thing I could see is obviously we already have an Octillery in these Rapid Strike decks that don't have that much draw outside of draw support anyway. It's a lot of tutor with the other Octillery. Maybe it could see play as like a one-of in there, but I'm pretty sure the other auxiliary is just better because it's just a combo piece finder. So you're pretty happy ripping a research every turn and then just finding the one combo piece you need. So yeah, I don't think this auxiliary is really going to see play at all, unfortunately. Snorunt is the Snorunt that evolves into the Frostlass. If your opponent's is a fighting type, it does more damage. Not really sure why, but that's interesting. This is one of the big ones. Garchomp EX is a Water Terra type 320 HP Stage 2 Pokemon. Again, got that Terra text, meaning it's immune on the bench. And its first attack, Hydrolander, for 1 fighting energy does 160 damage. And you can attach up to 3 fighting energy from your discard pile to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. That's a crazy efficient attack. That's 160 for 1 is absurd. Attacks like Arceus that does 200 for 3 is considered quite an efficient attack, and that's like 60-ish damage per energy. This is 160 damage per energy you invest into this, which is bonkers. I think before seeing the future stuff, this card like blew me away. I was like, this card is crazy. It's super efficient. I can't see how this isn't going to be a deck. It is weak to lightning, which worries me a little bit because of the existence of Iron Hands and the popularity of the Miraidon deck and stuff. But the fact you're using fighting energy means you can play fighting type Pokemon in your deck potentially, and this has energy acceleration to those fighting type Pokemon to be able to help with that, which is really cool. So you can even play like one prize fighting options and accelerate to them. They can try and deal with the one prize or deal with the fighting option, but because they're only taking one prize, they're not really trading very efficiently. Now, admittedly, Iron Hands will be, so you maybe have to play something tanky enough to survive Iron Hands. So you have to play something like in the middle of being able to survive Iron Hands, but not a 2-prizer to be traded up on something with something like a Miraidon. So it's a very small pool of cards, and I don't know what's in that pool of cards at the moment. Need to have a bit of a look. But you can play fighting type Pokemon, like I say, in this to be able to, try and counter the lightning type weakness, which is interesting. And the fact that you have acceleration built in means that you don't have to worry too much about playing those fighting type Pokemon because you can just rely on your usual strategy. So still looks very, very good, even with the lightning weakness. And still an incredibly efficient card. I think this card, to me, I feel like this deck is just a very low to the ground, trying to be an efficient attacking deck. 1 energy is crazy. It means you can play things like Cheryl very, very easily. 320 HP is still a lot for decks that aren't hitting full weakness on you. So you can like Cheryl and attach an energy again and still be doing 160, which is crazy. Or you can Cheryl, this has free retreat, so you can just retreat into another Garchomp that you've set up and reattach to this one. Yeah, this is a very, very efficient card. I can't like picture the deck list around this, but I can't see this not being like somewhat impactful. Basically, just because of how good the raw stats on this card are. We haven't even got to the second attack. The second attack, Sonic Dive, says discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and you do 120 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So again, even has inbuilt sniping. So your opponent's going to have like a Manaphy out at times, things like that as well. Really good for trading into 1-prizers. 160 deals with pretty much every 1-prizer in the game, which is really cool. Again, low to the ground, not much energy, not much investment required. Obviously, this being a stage 2 is probably the biggest thing that will hold this card back, and it may be big enough to hold it back entirely, but I'm hoping not. But it may be big enough to mean that this doesn't see play at all. Being a stage 2 means that you have to worry about things like Iron Hands taking 2 prizes on your little guys, and the devolution tool, which I don't think will be as impactful as people are saying, but still maybe seeing play here and there. You've also got random Sableye and stuff. Now, there is a Jirachi that may help out that, but you've also got random Sableye and stuff that you have to think about, which is annoying. So, yeah, I think it has a bit of an uphill battle compared to some of the cards that we've seen released or that will be coming out with this. But this card has such good stats, I can't see this not seeing some amount of play. It reminds me of like the stats of Charizard. Now, Charizard I think is a little bit better in terms of stats. The 10 extra HP and the 20 extra damage, plus the scalable damage does mean that Charizard is better stats-wise, but this still feels flexible enough. It still feels like it's to be honest, over-tuned enough to be able to pretty much not... I don't think this won't see a lot of experimentation. Like I say, it's really low to the ground. There's not masses and masses of investment you need into this. And it looks, yeah, really, really strong. So I'm really looking forward to trying out some Garchomp. I think it was, I guess, sort of overshadowed a little bit by some of the ancient and future stuff that's been revealed over the past few days, but I still think this is a really efficient card, and I just think the flexibility with it is too much to pass up on. Really, I really think this will be breakable somehow. The fact like free retreat as well is just really good. It means that you can like dance between a couple of these and heal them up and all that good stuff. So yeah, very cool stuff. Mantike is this is only worth noting basically because this is the first Mantike I think we've had since Diamond and Pearl era. So we've got a Mantike back. It heals one of your bench Pokemon for 120, which is a huge amount of heal for free. Again, I don't really know what situation you're going to be in when that happens, but that's a very big heal for free, which is cool. Palkia has the prize count attack. If you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, this does 80 more damage. The only thing I can really see this in is some kind of Lost Box deck to be able to gate to, because 160 is not a bad number if you're able to hit something for weakness. So it could be a one prize Lost Box attacker, a one prize water Lost Box attacker, but it already has Greninja, and whilst Greninja does do a lot less damage, and like everyone's prepared to Greninja because of the snipes and stuff, it's not like we're desperate for Pokemon that are weak or that deal water damage because, or are water type, because there's not masses and masses of water weak Pokemon in the format right now. So just an option for Lost Box. I don't think it's probably going to be really worth it, but it can be Mirage gated too. Gliscopod does 20 for each card in your opponent's hand. Don't really think this is good enough. I don't even think this is really good enough in like Zorro decks or whatever, because your opponent can just play around it, so not really too good. Dondozo lets you attach, look at the top 5 and attach any basic energy you find there. Big basic, deals 180 as well, but not really, again, not really worth investing into. Chinchou and Lantern. Lantern does pretty much the same thing. It's all one of the same things it always does. It does more damage if you have water energy attached. 200 for 3 on a stage 1 is... it's okay. It's not amazing. On a 1 prize stage 1, it's a little bit scary. And again, unfortunately, because we've had... Well, fortunately / unfortunately, because we've had the reveal of Iron Hands, it means that all of these kinds of things that are, like, it's very difficult to justify any of them, really. Plusle and Minun often have cool stuff. This the Plusle does more damage based on your opponent's the damage on your opponent's active Pokemon already, so can clean something up for 2 colorless. But again, it's 2 colorless, so you've got to do a little bit of investment, and it's not really worth it, I don't think. But the Minun is quite interesting. If you have Plus in play, when your opponent attacks an energy from their hand to one of their Pokemon, puts 2 damage on that 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. That's quite funny. You're able to stack these up, and often this is seen on like a stage 2 effect or a stage 1 effect. This is a basic effect, but obviously you need 2 basics out at the time. Still don't think it's going to be worth seeing play. I don't think it... we have a lot of ways... We have a lot of Pokemon right now that actually don't attach from the hand. We have Charizard, we have attaches from the deck. We have Gate, which also attaches from the deck. We have Gardevoir, which attaches from the discard pile. We have Flaffy, which is attached from the discard pile. So we're actually rarely attaching energy from hand right now. So not really good enough. Galvantula has a 50 plus 30 snipe for 1 energy. Always a very efficient attacker is Galvantula, but again, not really going to see much play in standard. Zekrom has, again, another attack that maybe you could consider Mirage gating to for lightning type coverage, but I think we already have more than enough lightning type options. We're already playing Raikou, which I think is almost always better, and I think we're going to be looking at playing Iron Hands in future as well. Tapu Koko has the Revenge Shock attack that deals 30 plus 90 more and paralyze the opponent if one of your opponent's Pokemon was knocked out last turn. Normally, these attacks are quite okay, depending on exclusively if we need this type coverage. 120 is not bad damage, but the fact it paralyzes as well is really cool because you can pair this with like an Iono. After your opponent's gone down to a low amount of prizes, you can be like Iono plus Revenge Shock to try and paralyze them and lock in the paralysis. Because you can gate to it and because you can accelerate to it with things like Flaffy and stuff, maybe this will see a bit of play here and there as like an option for Miraidon to try and lock out the game. They're already playing like Judge and Path and that kind of stuff, so you could maybe combine that also with Paralysis. So I could see this maybe like splashing into Miraidon here and there, just to try and add an alternative win condition to that deck. But again, we already have some really strong lightning cards coming out, so space is already going to start to tighten up in that deck anyway. And then Extreme Current deals 180, and you just discard one. 180 is not really efficient enough, but we already have way better attackers in those kinds of decks anyway, so you will very rarely be using this attack. I think it's basically just I think this card is basically just like a panic option to in Miraidon decks to try and steal a game that maybe you were losing in the prize race. Miraidon is a deck that really, a lot of the time, just has to prize race, and this means that maybe you're able to skew that prize trade and try and get back into the game and try and take the tempo again afterwards or after a knockout. But again, that's all thrown out of the water by Iron Hands anyway, because that's your new prize trader. We have a couple of Gimme Ghouls. Both Gimme Ghouls are interesting. This one only has 50 HP, but has Call for Family. I think the 50 HP is probably going to hold this back, because the other one has 70 HP, which is much better in a world of Sableye. And it does have an unlimited damage cap, but yeah, again, we've seen these kinds of effects. It does have 2 retreat though, so it's a bit of a difficult decision. 2 retreat is really annoying, but also 50 HP is very annoying as well. We do have obviously Jirachi, which we'll get to momentarily, but so we may have to prioritize high HP a little bit less. But do we want to be putting a Jirachi down at all times? Maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. We've got a Gligar and a Gliscor. Again, don't really do anything crazy. Gliscor just does double damage with poison, plus 80 damage, not really good enough. We have a Donphan that, again, doesn't really do enough, has Cragalanche and Powerful Spin. Groudon deals 60 damage, and you may discard up to 4 energy from your Pokemon, and it does 6 damage for each card discarded this way. Pretty efficient damage. You can just discard all of the energy on here to deal 180. Which is cool for trading up. You don't have to worry about having that extra energy. I think this is only ever going to be like a card that you try and splash in. This kind of thing could be the thing that you put into the Garchomp deck to make up for your lightning weakness. But again, this has under 140 HP, so Iron Hands will be able to trade back with this. So probably still not the right Pokemon. I think we need a 150 HP fighting type, basically, that can deal 120 damage. So we need a 150 HP fighting type that can deal 120 damage, probably for like 3 energy at most. So we'll have to wait and see if we can find one of those. I haven't looked through the pool of cards yet. We have Gible and Garchomp, Gible and Gabite, which aren't too impressive. We have Hooper EX, which is another Terra EX Pokemon, the basic fighting type that has 220 HP. And attacks for Dark Energy. Energy Crush for 2 Dark does 50 times the number of energy on all of your opponent's Pokemon. There's not masses of like board or energy flood decks right now. It's basically Gardevoir, which damages itself. And you're playing Dark Energy anyway, so you just play the Dark attackers in your Dark type deck. Charizard isn't bad. It means that you can deal with Arceuses for 2 energy, which is pretty cool. Again, lightning type decks are gonna really not like this. This reminds me of like a dark. This fits into like a dark deck that has some kind of acceleration. Now, we don't really have ways of attaching to this that I can think of outside of like gate and regular attachments, because Dark Patch, I'm almost certain has to be to a dark Pokemon. I should fact check that, but I'm pretty sure has to be to a dark type Pokemon, because it would have seen much more play if it didn't. So I don't think we really have great ways of attaching to this, which is a shame, because if this was like dark colorless, you could definitely do something here with, trying to play maybe even luminous energy plus some kind of energy acceleration. But because this is double dark, it's very difficult to accelerate to. Is there anything else dark type that accelerates? I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Correct me down below if I'm wrong, but it makes it a little bit difficult to fit in. I feel like these kinds of cards are meant to be the front of decks. It's like the main Pokemon in the deck to then have like dark type support or an additional option in dark type decks to help with some kind of type coverage. But because there's no acceleration to this, it makes it very difficult to kind of have that, have either of those concepts I'm going to look really silly if there is some kind of energy acceleration that we can use with this, but I really can't think of any. So yeah, I don't know really why you'd want to play this for this first attack a lot of the time. I guess, again, it deals with lightning-type Pokemon quite well. But other than that, can't really think of too much. Scoundrel Fist then just does 200, which again is a fairly efficient attack. Not crazy good, not crazy strong, but just an efficient attack. Yeah, I'm kind of perplexed by this one because I can't think of anything that jumps out immediately as to how we can accelerate to this. Am I missing anything? Probably. We'll find out. But I don't think the support is here for this. The best dark type attacker right now is Charizard, which is a fire type Pokemon, basically. So yeah, not really good enough. Yeah, not really good enough, I don't think. Energy Crush also is kind of variable based on the opponent as well, so they can somewhat control the attack. Minior has the Flying Meteor ability, which says once during a turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, when you attach an energy card from your hand, you may switch Pokemon with your active Pokemon. Unfortunately, this attack is just not good enough. Gravity Tackle says you do 20 more damage for each colorless in your opponent's your active Pokemon's retreat cost. So again, you're not really going to be doing crazy amounts of damage with this one, which is a shame. Because the ability is quite cool. Maybe this is... Yeah, no. I can't even think of anything. I can't even think of a way of justifying this. I can't think of how this works out. Hysterical Scissors on Clorf deals 30 plus 160 more if this Pokemon is affected by a special condition. Okay, sorry, I thought it was if the opponent was affected by a special condition. You can pair this with Brute Bonnet to deal 200 damage for colorless. No, can't really see this one either. It burns itself, which is quite funny, with Boiled Press, so you can Boil Press then Hysterical Scissors. But yeah, big combo for a one-prizer. Flamigo does 20 plus 20 for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Again, not really strong enough and a bit too fragile in a world of iron hands. Gengar has the Nightgate ability. Once during your turn, you may switch your active Pokemon on your benched Pokemon. Cool ability, but not really worth it on a stage 2. We've seen this ability on things like Dragonite and stuff in the past. Not really worth investing into a stage 2 to do this, though, I don't think. And then Nightmare just deals 100 damage and puts the opponent's active Pokemon asleep, so not really crazy strong. Absol has Brilliant Art. Lets you draw until you have 5 cards in hand after discarding as many as you want from your hand, and deals 20 plus 60 more if there's a tool attached. Not really that strong either. Scrafty's Pretty Pants. Yveltal deals 92 evolutions. Sorry, 92 evolutions for 2 colorless, but again, not really strong enough. Thievul has the Sneaky Snatch ability. Lets you, when you play this card to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may look at your opponent's hand to choose 2 energy you find there and shuffle them into the opponent's deck. Quite a specific ability, probably only like a control style ability. We had way better Thievuls in the past. Maybe one of them, I think one of them was Battle Styles, so there is still potential there. So maybe this is like a mini Thievul package in some kind of control deck, but outside of that, I can't really see it seeing play at all. Jirachi's a huge card. 70 HP, basic Pokemon. Metal type with a Stellar Veil ability. Attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon can't put damage counters on your benched Pokemon. So basically, this is a pretty big anti-Sableye card. It stops Sableye being able to attack the bench, which is pretty crazy. It means they have to put all of the counters on the active, and if it's not really a Pokemon that they're going to be setting up for a knockout or anything like that, it's basically just shutting down Sableye, which is, I think, what a lot of people have been asking for. I'm not as blown away by this card as some other people. Some people have said this is like the end of Lost Zone decks. I really don't think that's the case, because to be able to protect this, you also have to have Manaphy down so it doesn't get Greninjured. Now, yes, you can just recycle it after it does get Greninjured, but if you don't have Manaphy down, odds are they're going to be taking an extra prize. They're going to be taking 2 prizes with Greninja anyway, so it's kind of mitigating the effect. So you need to have this and Jirachi, this and Manaphy down to completely protect your board, and that's a lot of investment. Um, it might be worth it if your Lost Zone deck, if your Lost Zone matchup just completely flips by having Manaphy and Jirachi down and you don't need those extra bench slots, then maybe it's worth it. Obviously, this still can be bossed up and knocked out and it still has to be recovered, so there is that. But I think there will be certain decks that just can't afford to have Manaphy and Jirachi down, and because of that, they'll have to pick and choose whether they're playing around Greninja or Sableye, and they will potentially just put themselves in a situation where they lose to the other one, which is going to be interesting. I still think this is going to be a very impactful card. This actually, to me, works really well in, say, something like the Garchomp deck that we just talked about, where you don't need many Pokemon out. You can just have a couple of Garchomps out, and then your bench can be pretty free because of the way you can cycle the Garchomps and heal them with like Cheryl and things like that. Maybe you need like one draw support Pokemon to be able to draw through your deck as well, but you could have a couple of Garchomps, some kind of drawing support Pokemon, and then you've got 3 bench slots, so you could have Jirachi and Manaphy down, and you could have an extra Gibble down then, and it'd be completely protected. So I think it's going to be only massively impactful in decks that don't require a lot of sort of additional setup or additional support on the board, which typically are the kind of decks that aren't really as affected by Sableye anyway. So it's in this really weird crossover. I think this card is definitely impactful, and it will definitely change the way that Lost Zone has to think. There will definitely be times that you'll be able to bench this, and Iono and basically your opponent will be able to deal with it, and they'll have to have some kind of inefficient attack, and you'll be able to start trying to win the trade back that way. But I don't think it's as powerful as people are thinking. I think it's a pretty strong card, but I don't think it's going to completely kill Sableye. I think this in combination with like some of the maybe like Iron Hands and stuff like that, maybe there's a stronger argument to say we really have to reconsider the Lost Zone decks and Sableye in particular. But while Sableye is a massive selling point of the Lost Zone decks, being able to gate on turn 1 is still a selling point. Being able to that it's not just Sableye that sort of dictates that deck. There's still definitely some other very, very strong things that Lost Zone does that are outside of Sableye. Sableye is just the one that everybody kind of hates. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this card plays out. I think it's a strong card. I don't think it's going to be the end of Lost Zone. If Lost Zone ends up being like really bad, I think it will be the combination of this and things like Iron Hands rather than just this alone. But I think this definitely is another hurdle for Lost Zone to deal with, and probably starts to even the playing field a little bit, which is good. Also has a relevant attack as well. Search deck for 2 basic energy, reveal them, and put them into your hand. So it's not like it's completely dead if you start it as well, which is cool. But yeah, going to be an interesting one. I don't think it's crazy broken like some people have said. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this changes the landscape. It definitely will change how Lost Zone has to think, but I'm not convinced it's like the final nail in Lost Zone's coffin or anything. There's still some very broken things that Lost Zone decks can do before Sableye is anywhere near online. So yeah, just an additional thing, and the fact it takes up bench space I think is something that people are often not considering, because this is great Greninja fodder. So oops, that's my alarm going off. If you're taking up 2 bench spots to protect yourself from Greninja and Sableye, you better have a really solid other, like the rest of your setup going. And even then, they still have things like Dragonite and stuff that can just blow Pokemon up. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that one plays out. Ferrothorn has the solid body, which means it takes 30 less damage from attacks, but the attack is really pants. Honedge and Double Age don't do crazy stuff, but Aegislash is immune to all V and EX Pokemon. Don't think this is quite good enough on a stage 2. We already have this on a Safeguard Mimikyu, which admittedly only has 70 HP, which means it's a lot weaker to one prize options. This is pretty tanky, at least has 150 HP, but investing a stage 2 just for this effect I don't think is really worth it. And Hard Bash just deals 120, so it's not that strong of an attack to be playing with either. We have Zacian, which has Brave Blade and Iron Howl. No, nothing crazy here, letting you... it's a nice like one prize attacker, but realistically, it's not really going to see too much play. Orthworm has Sudden Rush, which deals 90 plus 150 as 3 or less cards remaining in your deck. We've seen this kind of effect before. It's never really paid off too well, but it's quite funny that it's back, and it's on a great little guy. Look at him. 240 for 3 is obviously a really, really strong effect, but getting down to 3 is a bit spooky, and the biggest thing, well, the scariest thing is against things like the Lugia deck, you basically have to be at 3 and then have to keep recycling stuff in, because you can't be at 2 because they just Crag-a-Launch you. So we already have some kind of like niche milling effects in the format. So this isn't even good against all of the decks in the format right now. So yeah, not quite good enough, but fun to see it again. And look at him, he's great. Gholdengo EX, I think, is the last big one. There is a Bombardier and a Cyclizar, but Gholdengo is, I think, the last very impressive card. This is the first time we're seeing this Pokemon, and look at him. He also looks great. 260 HP Metal type with the bonus coins ability. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, draw 2 cards instead. Really nice. That's just an additional little bit of bonus draw. If you have 2 or 3 Gholdengo about, you can draw probably, like, if you have 3 out, you can probably draw 4, maybe draw 5. If you're able to switch between them, but probably draw 4 additional cards. This is really nice. You can also, because you can have multiple Gholdengo, it's across like at different points, so you can maybe draw a card, see if you get a way of searching the deck to thin out to make your draws better, or find a combo piece, or then find a supporter and then draw cards after a research or something like that. So yeah, really nice ability, just helping the consistency of the deck. And Make It Rain for 1 Metal Energy, does 50 damage. And you discard any number of basic energy from your hand, and it does 50 damage times the number of energy you discard. This reminds me of Blacephalon GX, which was obviously very, very strong. That lost zoned from board, so slightly different, but we have a lot of ways of recovering energy right now. We have the superior energy retrieval plus regular energy retrieval. We have the new Professor's Letter quote-unquote reprint that we've seen from the Ancient set that will be in the same set as this to be able to search for energy. We have lots of ways of being able to like get a lot of energy into the hand, and then being able to make it rain for any amount of damage to knock out whatever your opponent is playing. It's got inbuilt draw support as well to try and draw some extra energy before you start tutoring them out of the deck. Again, my biggest concern for this deck is things like Iono and Roxanne, because obviously you discard all of your energy. You need to find all your combo pieces to get your energy back after a knockout. If you then go down to like 2 or 3 cards, that's a little bit scary. So I think we're going to have to play this with a lot of counter stadiums to be able to draw post Roxanne and post Iono with bonus coins, and a lot of draw supporters to be able to draw into raw energy, but also draw into our energy recovery cards and our energy search cards. But again, it feels like a very low to the ground kind of efficient attacking deck. It sounds, it just sounds like a really efficient Pokemon. I think for 1 energy, you don't have to worry about attaching over multiple turns. You can set this up in a turn, which is really cool. It sounds very, very interesting. I'm very excited to try this one out. I don't really have much to say about it because there's no sort of acceleration or anything like that. With the Garchomp, where you got to think about the attackers you can play it with and how you're protecting yourself, this, that, and the other. This is just a card that draws some cards and deals a lot of damage, and that's, I think, will be why this card sees success if it does, because it's just good at what it does. It doesn't do anything fancy. It just aims to win the game quite quickly. It has unlimited damage cap. It has great draw. Really, really impressive card. Nothing crazy to say about it, I don't think, but one that I'm really interested in trying out. Bombardier EX is the last EX of the set, which has 200 HP. It's a colorless Pokemon, and it has the fast carry attack. If you go first, you can use this attack, set eject for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Don't really think this is worth playing multiple of, but it does have the Shadow Wind attack, which for 3 colors deals 130, and it may shuffle this Pokemon, all cards attached to it, into your deck. So that does make it a little bit better, because it means that you can fast carry, build up your board, and then invest your first couple of energy into Shadow Wind and hide again, and not be sort of this 2-prize Pokemon that's going to be a liability later on in the game. So I'm not really sure where this sees play. It needs to be in some kind of a deck that can accelerate to it, because realistically you're going to want to be able to accelerate Shadow Wind before your opponent can try and take a knockout, which is probably on turn 2 of the game. For some decks, it'll be turn 1, but probably on turn 2 of the game for other decks. So you want to be able to accelerate to this and take or use Shadow Wind, even if it's not for a knockout, just to get out of the way. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't really think it's going to see play overall, but the fact that you can use it on your first turn and then hide on your second turn means that you don't really give your opponent an opportunity to try and capitalize on you playing a 2-prize setup Pokemon. It reminds you of like a Squawkabilly or whatever, but it then obviously has to stay on the board. You don't have to. Your opponent doesn't necessarily get the benefit of that, whereas things like Squawkabilly and Luminion are just kind of bench sitters for the whole game and ready for your opponent to just capitalize on. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I don't think it's really going to be good enough realistically, but I really like the intersynergy between these two attacks, and I'm very interested to see whether people do try this out. I think, unfortunately, again, because it looked like we were moving to a format where they were trying to integrate evolution decks and basic decks at the same time, and this was a great one for evolution decks, but then we saw all of the future and ancient stuff, and big basics are back, and this kind of card doesn't really work massively well in it does search for your big basics, I guess. But yeah, this kind of effect lends more to like small evolving basics where you need multiple of them just in case they start to get knocked out. So yeah, I'm not convinced, but I kind of hope this does see play, just because of how you can almost get a refund for playing this Pokemon when you use Shadow Wind. So yeah, interesting one. And then finally there's a Cyclizar, which deals 140 if you've used a supporter card. Not great, but brilliant artwork. So yeah, this was way longer than I expected it to be. My voice is absolutely dead. Some cool arts for us to look at whilst we go over the last couple of pieces. Yeah, I think Goldengo and Garchomp are definitely the two selling points of this set. It would have been really interesting to see both of these Pokemon in a format without the Ancient and Future stuff. Now, we will see that in Japan, but we're going to have it with all of these impactful Paradox Pokemon, so whether these will still be able to make a splash remains to be seen. But I was really excited about both of these cards, so I hope they can. I still think they're both very good. I think they both can probably stand up to some of the Paradox stuff. Maybe Goldengo a little bit less. But Garchomp feels like really, really efficient. So as long as you can get a couple of Garchomps out, it feels like maybe you can try and just trade 160s with them. But even then you're still not getting knockouts. So there'll be ones that can just... I don't know. Maybe they're not quite good enough. We'll have to wait and see. Either way, thanks so much for tuning in. Some of these arts are brilliant as well, by the way. Really excited to see sort of some of the other old arts that we see. But the Goldengo and the Gimmighoul are brilliant. This Yveltal is brilliant as well. This Minior is also great. So yeah, really, really good sort of secret rares as always with these decks, always with these sets. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Going to be interesting to see how this plays out with all the Paradox stuff. Looking forward to seeing how it all blends together and how things work out in Japan, because they are going to have this format for a month or so without the Paradox stuff. And hopefully there's some kind of Champions League that we'll see these cards in tournament setting as well. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Apologies for my raspy voice throughout the video. Like I say, I think I'm getting sick, which is a shame, but really wanted to get some first impressions out to you because I like doing these videos. I like going back and seeing where I was wrong, but also I like looking at these cool, fancy new cards as well. So yeah, see you guys in another video soon.